welcome to another episode of California Society of Anesthesiologists podcast series, Vital Times. I'm Dr. Ludwig Lin, and today I'm thrilled to be able to have a conversation with Dr. J.W. Beard. Dr. Beard is the Chief Medical Officer of GE Healthcare Patient Care Solutions. Previously, Dr. Beard was the Chief Medical Officer of ICU Medical Incorporated. He trained in anesthesiology at the University of California, San Francisco, and was a clinician for 15 years, serving as the chairman of his anesthesiology department. Additionally, he currently serves on the board of the Anesthesia Patient Safety Foundation, APSF. I think one thing that I've been really proud of with this series is the ability to highlight and amplify the diverse things that anesthesiologists do within healthcare. We have the skills. So I think Dr. Beard is a perfect example of that. So thank you for joining us today, Dr. Beard. If we could start by having you declare any potential conflicts of interest.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here, Ludwig. And I am an employee of GE Healthcare. That's the end of my conflicts.
Okay, well, that makes it easy. Let's get started. In terms of GE Healthcare, Chief Medical Officer, Patient Care Solutions, those are big words, big titles. What do you see as your job?
So I think just to highlight one of the things that you said earlier, Ludwig, which is kind of the suitability of anesthesiologists for different roles within healthcare. Just to tell you a little bit about Patient Care Solutions and how it fits within GE Healthcare. So GE Healthcare is comprised of 4 businesses. We call them segments. And Patient Care Solutions is essentially the hospital products division of GE Healthcare. Hospital products used in acute care. And I think your clinical listeners are going to recognize many of these care areas of parts of the hospital and patient populations they're familiar with. So Patient Care Solutions at GE Healthcare includes first anesthesia delivery. So we make anesthesia workstations, also called anesthesia machines. The next part of Patient Care Solutions is patient monitoring. So these are the bedside multi-parameter monitors that are on the wall in the ICU, the ED, PACUs, operating rooms. We make wireless wearable monitors that are used with patients in the med-surgical ward environment for continuous vital signs monitoring. We make the vital signs monitors that are used for spot check monitoring. So those are the monitors that roll around on the stands from room to room or from pre-op bed to pre-op bed. So that's our patient monitoring business. We also have a diagnostic cardiology business, and that's the carts that roll up to the bedside to do the 12-lead ECG. We have the stress ECG technologies as well, treadmill, primarily in the United States, or bikes outside the United States. We make Holter monitors that patients go home with. Should have also mentioned in the monitoring business is cardiac telemetry, which is kind of in between cardiology and monitoring solutions. So anesthesia, monitoring, cardiology. The next business within Patient Care Solutions is maternal infant care. So that's the bedside monitors that are looking at fetal heart rate and uterine activity. It's kind of the bedside maternal fetal monitor, and we have kind of wired versions of that and also wireless. And then within the NICUs, we make incubators and warmers, and also the warmers that you'd find in the operating room during a C-section, for example, or during a labor room at a delivery. And then the final business within Patient Care Solutions is digital solutions. So those are essentially the digital products that aggregate data and support clinicians by making that data visual and supporting decision making. So one of maybe the most familiar products there is a product called Centricity Perinatal. So those of us who have done anesthesiology on labor and delivery You may have a team huddle a couple times a day where the entire team gets together, doctors, nurses, the anesthesiologists, nurses, obstetricians, and others. And you look at the large display and you can see all the patients' different maternal fetal tracings on the board. And you go room by room on that. So that visualization may be delivered through Centricity Perinatal. So that's an example of a digital solution. We also have digital solutions that put ECG into large databases that are remotely accessible and visualized by cardiologists when they're treating their patients. So it's a big division, hospital products in those areas that hopefully are familiar to your listeners.
That covers a lot of what we do on a daily basis. Sounds quite powerful and sounds very important. Obviously, as the chief medical officer, I suppose you're ultimately responsible for just about all of it. But what are some of the particular tasks that you see yourself really focusing on?
Yeah, that was that. Thanks. That was the second part of your first question. What do I do? So I think one of my most important responsibilities is being a partner for our business leaders. So I work with our CEO, with our CFO, and then our general managers of all those businesses I mentioned that to support the decision making that keeps us moving in the right direction as a company. Like ultimately, the company has to grow and we have to be profitable so we can continue to invest and bring technology to market that improves patient outcomes and improves the lives of clinicians. So I'm the physician voice in that leadership team that supports this decision making. And I'm one voice. The business leaders, our technical leaders, our other functional leaders have perspectives, and we all work together to try to make the best decision available. But that business partnership, that strategic role is a really important element of what I do. Another role I have and along with my team, is we support the innovation process within GE Healthcare. So when a new technology is brought to market, like we want to bring the right technology. And that means that the years before it ever gets to market, because it takes years, the years before we have effectively translated the user needs to the requirements for a product that we're going to develop. My team's role, one of their most important roles, is that very beginning, which is translating what is the clinical need. Is there an unmet need here associated with patients who are experiencing adverse events? Is there an unmet need related to usability and the clinician's interaction with the technology? So that interaction at the very beginning is absolutely essential that we do it well. So there's that innovation piece of our role. And then along the innovation pathway, we also have responsibility. It's kind of our third bucket of responsibility, which is clinical research. So clinical research, we do pre-market, and clinical research, we do post-market. So pre-market clinical research is what we need to kind of internally at very early stages validate that a technology works, that we can build it with our capabilities. And then once we know we're going to go forward with it, we need to do the clinical research that demonstrates to global regulatory authorities safety and efficacy and that we've met their requirements. And that's an essential initial step to bringing a technology to market, is managing the clinical research and then providing those results to the regulatory authorities. And then we do post-market clinical research. And that is more real-world analysis, real-world investigation of what do these technologies do in the real world. So one of the challenges that we have in translating research results that are done pre-market to valuable information for our customers is that oftentimes those pre-market studies are pretty rigid. They're rigid. There's tons of patients who are excluded. There's very specific inclusion criteria. It can lead to some some narrow applications and study of the essential elements of a technology, oftentimes driven by a protocol. So the clinician is involved in a study and they're either getting a determination they're going to use the technology or they're not, if it's a randomized study. Or they're going to be using a technology and they're going to use it based upon a specific sequence. But that's different once you're in the real world, because people are trained, the technology is implemented, and then there's a lot more variability in how something is used. So it's not always clear how the pre-market, really focused work is going to translate into post-market. So we also do post-market research. And that really our goal there is to do research, provide the results to clinicians so they can make objective decisions when they are supporting a decision about where they're going to invest, like what's going to be good for them, what's going to be good for their patients. So one of my essential responsibilities is to give our clinician customers the information to make decisions. And that's kind of ties into that research piece, is our publication responsibility. So research is not done until it's published.
Right.
And the publication's not done until it gets to someone who needs the information to make a decision. And that publication piece, that's well understood about how to do that. But getting the information down to a person who needs that information, who's going to benefit from it, that's much more difficult. And you and I are talking a little bit about, podcasts and other ways of communicating with clinicians. People get their information from a number of different sources. And, it's part of my role is to publish and then support our partners in our business to try to get the information out. And that's our publication piece. So we went through a business partnership, innovation, research and publication. Another role we have is health economics policy reimbursement. So any of your clinician customers who have been in the room advocating for their hospital or their hospital system to make an investment, recognize there's economic realities, that the hospital systems have a budget and they're making trade-offs every single year among the competing priorities that are coming from the Department of Anesthesiology, and then the orthopedics and our orthopod colleagues, our cardiologist colleagues, general surgeons. Everyone is competing in some way for the same available funds. So also in our discipline, we have a health economics policy reimbursement function. We can do economic analyses of the impact of a technology on patient outcomes. And it helps substantiate the potential return on investment for our hospital customers and our clinician customers. And we also try to support effective coding for the use of our technologies, whether or not that may or may not be tied to reimbursement. So if our technologies are used, we want it to be coded appropriately, because ultimately that is increasingly and creates an opportunity for retrospective work and large databases that come from the electronic medical record and other sources, where we can begin to compare groups. What's the outcome of one group that had this technology used? What's the outcome of the other group who did not? And so we have that kind of coding function. And then the final piece is like an engagement and educational piece within our function. And so one element is me working with professional societies and other third-party stakeholders. So it's great to be here with you, Ludwig, and speaking to the CSA audience. In anesthesiology, I also work with APSF, which you mentioned, ASA, the European Society of Anesthesia and Intensive Care Medicine, and then other global anesthesiology societies. And from that overview of patient care solutions, that gives you a sense of all the different professional societies that our business works with globally. So US, very important customer and clinician base for us and patient base, but we're a global business. And so we work with professional societies all over the world, clinicians all over the world. and then educational activities. So we do education internally, we do education externally, and I just covered a lot of ground, but it's essentially using the skills that we have as anesthesiologists that span across the hospital and all the different places that we practice, and taking that expertise and training and applying it inside the corporate environment and helping our business be successful for patients and clinicians. Like that's what I do.
It sounds really exciting. It also sounds like a lot, but as you were wrapping up your summary, I realized that you're right. Anesthesiologists are actually a perfect filter to have these conversations with different disciplines because we see all of it, right? You've just taken that and taken it up several levels so that you can do that on a global basis. It's pretty cool. I suppose what I really wanted to ask you next is, did you have a vision that this is where you were going to end up? If yes, then how did you strategize for that? Or if this was sort of a lucky outcome of a journey, how did you go about that journey? So tell us more.
Yeah, so it was all just by chance. Like when I finished training at UCSF, which I'm very thankful for the opportunity to train there, and the number of training programs that exist in California that are high profile and getting our clinicians prepared to practice independently. Like our state has such an incredible history and an incredible foundation of universities today. So when I left UCSF, I went into private practice, and my initial aspirations was I'm going to get as good at doing as many challenging cases as I can. So I wanted to come out, I wanted to become comfortable in regional anesthesia, comfortable in independent obstetrical anesthesia. I wanted to do vascular, I wanted to do thoracic. So I wanted to have a challenging clinical practice and become as good as I could be at the bedside. I very quickly got involved in kind of the QA element of running our group in Oakland, and kind of enjoyed that complementary kind of administrative element of practice, and took off with some initial quality improvement projects. One of the first things I did was working with our department and Department of Pharmacy to try to establish a protocol and have resources available for local anesthetic systemic toxicity. Because of the volume of blocks we did and the kind of emerging literature on the treatment of LAST, that was one of the first kind of protocol developments and collaborations that we did. Following that, we did a program that was Department of Anesthesiology plus our cardiac and thoracic surgeons plus medical device manufacturers for pacemakers and ICDs, because we saw a ton of implantable cardiac devices coming to the operating room. And I know personally, as one of the junior anesthesiologists, I would see that and I'm like, what is that? Do I put a magnet on it? Do I need a rep to be here? Is it a pacer? Is it an ICD? What's going to happen if the cautery is the foot? What if it's cautery that's going to be in the abdomen? So we did this additional project, which was trying to create protocol and standardization about how to improve the care for those patients. And I think those experiences got me involved and interested in our practice management. And so that's when I moved into a role of chairman of one of our departments. And I think it was really, Ludwig, through that experience that I got this exposure to a much larger healthcare industry than I knew existed. Mm-hmm. So it was the opportunity to go to medical staff meetings and interact with the leaders of other specialties, of course, but also hospital administration and all the different elements of hospital administration involved in and keeping the facility moving,
Yep.
staffed, and prioritizing care lines, things like that. But then also got involved in relationships with vendors. So we'd have vendors come in with new technologies for us to assess. Got involved in revenue cycle management of our practice and the complexities of effective record keeping, encoding, and ensuring that our anesthesiologists were properly submitting for the services that they provided. And also, effective negotiations with our payer partners of just ensuring that we were as a group being paid what was kind of the market rates for the services we were providing. And that's kind of an ongoing process itself.
Yes.
So I got involved in all these elements of managing a practice I didn't even know really existed. But it wasn't till I just actually really had a long, difficult day in GI when I was struggling. It was like I think it was 4 cases in a row where it was a struggle with keeping someone comfortable or managing the airway. It was constant, and it was exhausting. And I know many of your listeners have had probably days like that where someone's either uncomfortable or they need really pretty intensive airway support. And that was I think it was like my entire morning in GI. And along the way, I was struggling with one of my pieces of airway equipment. And I thought, what if we had a different piece of airway equipment that had these features? And then I couldn't let that go. And I eventually founded a med device company. And it was really through that experience that I got my interest in med tech took off. And then that's kind of what led to my current career. That was many years ago now, but that was the beginning. Was a rough day in GI, which led to me getting an experience in med tech that I recognize as my long-term professional interest.
I love it. I feel like anesthesiologists are very proactive people. You just took that to the nth degree. You're like, I'm going to do something about this.
Well, anesthesiologists are incredible about getting things to work.
Right.
And like making do with your environment, making do with the equipment that's available, and just figuring out how to get someone safely through an episode of care in whatever circumstances that the whole team has found themselves in. So I think anesthesiologists are incredibly innovative and adaptable by nature. And that's reflective of the number of specialties that we work with, high intensity environments, different areas of the hospital that maybe were never even intended to have an anesthesia machine in them, that are dark and isolated. And, we
That's
are
a big topic now.
going to those locations and doing anesthetics to support new procedures all the time. So I think my career path is just consistent with our innovation as a specialty.
You're so right. I mean, all of these NORA opportunities that we have now, they are very technology intensive.
Yeah.
And for example, being able to have seamless transitions in data acquisition, in the care of these very critically ill patients, that's also important.
Yep.
Okay, so next question for you about your career path is this. How have you managed along the way to acquire additional skills to do your job?
A lot of it is learning while doing. There were, in I think just like some of the fundamental elements of med tech that I learned through the startup and now are really rigorous, big parts of like a large med tech company like GE Healthcare, are just like the fundamental underpinnings of safety and efficacy. So for me, it was learning like what are our regulatory responsibilities? How do we interact with regulatory authorities to meet their expectations? What are our internal requirements for how we design, verify, validate technologies? How do we document that in a way that demonstrates that safety and efficacy to us internally, while also being something that can be audited and tells the same story to a third-party regulator? Mm-hmm. So these our regulatory responsibilities and our quality management system, our quality system, those were two of the areas that were completely new to me. And it was really learning while doing and teaching myself as much as possible through publicly available resources, and then also going to conferences and engaging with experts and consultants where needed. Mm-hmm. There's another part of my role, which is interacting with a number of different non-clinical stakeholders. Many of my colleagues have come through business backgrounds. And so my ability to communicate effectively with our chief financial officer, with our financial leaders in our businesses, with our business leaders, there needs to be a common language and understanding of this kind of the essential terminology and the interlock of operations, prices, profitability, financial statements, just the elements of running a business. And I certainly learned some of that in the startup world, but I also did an MBA as well. And the MBA was a crash course for me in business. And I will say that one of the areas that I was not that prepared for, which is incredible to think about, was that I went through college, went through med school, finished all my training, and I just wasn't that great in Microsoft Office. So I could do basics in a spreadsheet, and I was reasonable probably in Microsoft Word. But that was another skill set that I needed to develop, was trying to develop effective presentation materials. Being able to use spreadsheets at least kind of an intermediate level. I would not be an expert by any means, but really being able to take advantage of Excel. I'm primarily a Microsoft Office user, so really being able to leverage Excel, being able to leverage the tools in Microsoft Word to manage large documents effectively. That was another area that was a learning while doing that I was not super prepared for. It was very much a steep learning curve for a period of time.
Sounds like a lot of learning.
Yeah, but there are plenty of us, I think, who really love learning.
Yes.
You and I were talking about ASA recently, and I really enjoy going to lectures and really enjoy learning new things. And some of these practical skills, like Microsoft Office, may sound super boring, but learning it for the first time is wow, I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know I could create sections in Word, and I didn't know I could drag to reorder them. There are these aha moments that are really, even in something that's just pretty basic about existing in an office environment, can be themselves interesting for sure.
Well, I think you do have to take joy in learning. Otherwise, having to acquire all these skills to do your job, it would get, overwhelming, I would think. So, that probably is why you have succeeded and you've kept on moving up to this role. I wanted to switch gears a little bit, JW, and ask you about your involvement on the board of APSF. I love APSF. Does such good work. Patient safety is so paramount, obviously, to all of us, but especially to anesthesiologists. How did you get involved? What is your own personal mission? On the board? Tell us more.
So I was a long time avid reader of the APSF newsletter. It was, as a resident, it was a couple times a year. The articles are written in a way that makes them easy to get through. They are digestible, like cutting edge clinical recommendations, cutting edge summaries of a topic, all within a manageable length and a manageable structure. So I always really enjoyed reading the newsletter. And I hadn't engaged with APSF prior to my move to the medtech industry. So in the first company I worked with, you mentioned ICU Medical, which is an infusion therapy company, kind of their primary business. They have multiple other businesses, but when I was with them, it was primarily infusion therapy. And so I got involved with APSF at that time. There's plenty of opportunities to improve the safety of medication management and infusion therapy in the operating room and the perioperative environment. And so I got involved in supporting APSF through their Committee on Technology as kind of an industry representative to support any evaluations related to infusion therapy. And then got involved as a volunteer in one of their committees for medication safety and one of their Stolting conferences on medication safety.
Okay.
And then I just remained engaged, just volunteer contributor to various initiatives and programs, and then had the opportunity to join their board a couple years ago. And so I'm, really proud of what APSF does, really proud of ASA for being such a strong supporter of APSF, which is one of their foundations. And our board's made up of a diverse group of people from various practices. We've also got a couple industry representatives on the board that I think represent the acknowledgement that collaboration with industry does support the missions of improving patient safety and improving the lives of clinicians. And so it's a great, very collaborative environment. And in terms of my roles as a board member, we have, annual investments that we make in research. So we do fund researchers each year. We have annual prioritizations of emerging patient safety issues. And those are topics that we highlight both with literature through the newsletter, and then we highlight as focuses in the Stolting conferences to really explore topics and create improved understanding to ultimately, support decision making and therapeutic choices. So it's a wonderful organization. I'm very proud to participate in it, and thank for any of your listeners who are out there. APSF we do have various sources of support. One of the most important sources of support is the individual donor. And so if anyone wants to give to APSF, you can go to the website and find the opportunity there to support the organization. You can also find us at ASA. We do have a booth there. You can stop by and learn more about it.
Sounds really good. It sounds like a win-win, because I was thinking you hearing about the concerns of clinicians, the safety issues, you can take that back to GE Healthcare and actually do something about it, get it done, which is how you started. You wanted to find solutions to difficult clinical scenarios. So it's kind of what you were meant to do, I think. It's great. You and I had promised each other that we were going to keep this concise. And I feel like even though we could keep on talking, we should wrap it up. So, I wanted to thank you for taking the time and really translating to us the excitement you have in your job. Before we go, though, I wanted to ask you, we've covered a lot of ground. We really sort of talked about, your own personal story, but what were some of the things that we did not discuss that you really want to make sure that our audience hears from you?
I think one of the topics we didn't discuss is kind of our need, really the urgency as a medical community to get our arms around a couple huge issues. I think one of which is just the overall health of our workforce, which is tied into clinician burnout and concerns about emerging clinician shortages. So we didn't talk about that a whole lot. Like technology can make a difference. Technology can actually be add a different element of challenge. There's so much technology at the bedside. All of it can kick off alarms. All of it is demanding attention from people that are working to make a really important time-sensitive decisions. And all that is overwhelming potentially, and the need to document it is overwhelming. So we didn't talk about burnout and the opportunity for the medical community and industry to try to improve this. But I think that's a very important topic. I think the other important topic is to figure out how we're going to manage the rollout of AI into healthcare. There's a ton of potential, but there's a lot of peril. So I think the large language models, in my experience, are taking off in supporting clinicians in potentially the management of complex cases, of an uncommon constellation of signs and symptoms, and looking for the right differential and not overlooking like tests or therapies. So these large language models, I think, are really, really good. But how we're going to get AI to the bedside in a way that's supporting a clinician and recognizing ongoing trends and patterns in a patient's data. The multiple physiologic parameters are being monitored at any one time, plus the context that comes from the patient's history, plus the lab data, plus imaging data that may exist in the past. Like, how does this all come together and support us in a way that has the safety and efficacy that we would expect? Like, this is an area that's really developing quickly now. And I think it's on all of us to figure out how we're going to do this and how it safely gets deployed, because it's a very active area, but there's a lot of unknowns. So I think those are the two areas, Ludwig, we didn't touch on, but we could spend probably a lot more time on, are just kind of health of our workforce and reducing burnout, and then trying to get our arms around what we're going to do with AI in healthcare.
Right. And leveraging the technology appropriately to achieve those goals.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is a challenge.
Well, those sound like topics that all of us will have to keep careful track of. So thank you for mentioning that. Yeah. Well, on that note, I think this is a good time for us to wrap up this conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time. It was such a joy to hear about how you move through your life to get to this point. And it sounds like there's a lot more to be done. And I look forward to seeing how all of it develops. So thank you, Dr. Beard.
Ludwig, thank you. And thanks to all your listeners. Thanks to all your clinicians for doing what they do every day. If there's patient listeners too, thank you for partnering with our clinicians and moving towards better health in our communities. So I appreciate the opportunity, Ludwig.
Sure thing. Okay, well, this concludes another episode of the CSA's Vital Signs podcast. I'm Dr. Ludwig Lin. Take care.